Ladies, gentlemen, all those outside and in between, welcome to another episode of RenFare, a podcast dedicated to psychoanalyzing and critiquing media. I am your host, Connor Renfro, one half of From the Margins. Listen until the end for more ways to hear me and support the project. With structuralist and post-structuralist deconstruction theories, we tried to examine the seasons of Teen Wolf as distinct works without examining the time period that affected them. Earlier episodes, like the ones on feminism, race, and Marxism, did pay attention to the culture in a very narrow scope. Why does Teen Wolf only punish its female villains? Why is the race of non-white characters so emphasized compared to others? How does money shape interpersonal relationships and motivations within the series? In this episode, we are going to examine culture as a whole, specifically how the span of time between July 2015, when the 6th season was ordered, and November 2016, when the finished season premiered, interacts with the content of the season. Considering how I'm writing this in 2020, I don't think I need to get into a deep historical lesson about the 2016 election, but this would hardly be a viable academic report if I didn't establish some premises. Donald Trump announced he would run for president on the Republican ticket on June 16, 2015, 1 month before the 6th season of Teen Wolf was ordered. His early platform held two very noteworthy initiatives: the construction of a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border and a travel ban on Muslims. His first proposal, the border wall, was a response to the ongoing immigration issues in the United States. There is a long history of people traveling into the U.S. and establishing residence here in a manner that is not lawful. I'm trying to avoid using the term illegal immigration or any phrase that would suggest illegality, because no person is illegal. I personally believe in open borders and the inherent right of any person to live anywhere they want. As an extension of this, I would also advocate for the dissolution of all states, but we don't have time to unpack all that. The unfortunate fact of the matter is that the United States, as well as every other country to my knowledge, has a strict immigration policy to control who can and cannot live here and possess the full rights afforded to a citizen. But what rights are those anyway? I hate it here. So we got a lot of people from Central and South America coming into the country and living here undocumented, which a lot of people see as a huge problem. Trump tapped into the xenophobic and racist beliefs of many Americans to galvanize a right-wing voter base. He made erroneous claims about rapists and drug dealers to turn an entire ethnic group into monsters in the eyes of many. Put a pin in that for now. The other thing he proposed was the travel ban. During the Republican primary, before he was even the presumptive candidate, he was calling for a database tracking American Muslims and a stop to entry of people originating in countries with a history of terrorism against the United States. That was a quote. I should have said, and I quote. Oh well. This is, of course, coded language to obscure the real target: Middle Eastern countries with a high Muslim population. The stereotype is that Muslim people are terrorists. They did 9/11, ISIS, ISIL, etc. Once again, Trump is marginalizing and ostracizing an ethnic group. Both of these initiatives would be actualized with disastrous consequences once he was elected, but that occurs outside the scope of Teen Wolf's creation. Along with these campaign proposals, Trump also had a slogan that will forever tar everyone's brain: Make America Great Again. On its own, it's a great slogan. It's imperative, it's snappy, it's nostalgic, and forward-thinking at the same time. It's almost a tragedy that it became a conservative rallying cry. Unfortunately, that's the only context it could ever be utilized. The slogan operates on a few premises. 1. America is not currently great. 2. America used to be great. 3. America can be made great. I think anyone who isn't a wealthy liberal would agree with the first premise. America is not doing so hot, y'all. Wages have stagnated. The rent has increased. The economy completely tanks once or twice a decade. We're still racist. We're still sexist. We're still homophobic, transphobic, xeno-Islamo, arachnophobic, etc. The problem is those are not the things conservatives identify as the issues facing our country. Well, except for maybe the economic issues, though they'll just end up blaming that on Jewish people. Oh yeah. Anti-Semitism is still here too. And because different political factions disagree on what is making America not great, they can't agree on the second premise, that America used to be great. For brevity's sake, I'll just mention that we live in the shadow of 80s Reaganomics. Reagan changed the economy a lot. Deregulation, increased privatization, and lower taxes. Have you heard of trickle-down economics? Yeah. Reagan created an environment where rich people can become exponentially richer, while people without the means to do so struggled far behind. His policies ended a period of stagflation, stagnant economic growth, and inflation of currency, as well as increasing the GDP, but it also led to a widened income gap and the national debt tripling in size. Conservatives love the guy. The surface level metrics of a good economy were met. Those left behind be damned. There are even some liberals who defend him because capitalism won. Never mind how he botched the response to the AIDS crisis, his war on drugs that disproportionately impacted communities of color, and how the specter of neoliberal austerity weakened public services from adequately supporting its own citizens. To sum it up, the 80s created a mode that liberal Americans love, but it's actually bad. MAGA's final premise is that America can be made great. I believe most people do agree with this premise. Progressives want to create a country with freedoms and equality for all. Liberals want to maximize wealth accrual through any means necessary, and conservatives want to maintain power structures that advantage them. Because Trump is the one with the slogan and the far-right voter base, we understand the imperative to make America great again entails a return to the nostalgic 80s era where we didn't have to worry about minorities and could instead amass offensive levels of wealth. Another tension bubbling to the surface in all this was intergenerational conflict. Baby boomers became outdated bigots who destroyed the world with their disastrous wars, neoliberalism, and contribution to global climate change. Millennials became lazy snowflakes who feel entitled to things without working for them, demand safe spaces to avoid any kind of conflict around their delusional identities, and blame all their problems on racism without taking any kind of personal responsibility. Where does Gen X fit into all this? Who cares about them? The iconization of yesterday as a better time, the vilification of ethnic groups as the source of our problems, and the lionization of a leader who aims to fix these problems created a comparison between Trump's campaign and the rise of fascism. The most notable allusion was to Hitler and the rise of Nazi ideology in Germany. Calling Trump Hitler, depressingly apt, became a popular line among liberals and progressives who opposed him. In summary, between his initial campaign announcement in 2015 to his election in 2016, Trump used racist rhetoric to galvanize his base, making even the most myopic liberal aware of racial tensions pervading the country, and hailed the nostalgic 80s as an era worthy of emulation. Combating these ideas led to a generational divide between the young and the old, and these are some of the things I see happening in Teen Wolf Season 6A. Production on 6A finished before the election, since it aired immediately afterward, but we can see how Trump's campaign and its tumultuous effect on U.S. society shaped the first 10 episodes. Quick note before we begin, not all influences and choices made in the creation of art are conscious. I know I say some version of this every episode, but it bears repeating. There are definitely some choices in the writing that directly address the culture of the US during Trump's campaign. But some other things I'm going to point out and comment on might not be what Jeff Davis and the other writers intended. In those instances, I am merely reading and interpreting based on my perspective of history. We start off with Liam, Scott's beta, and Hayden, Scott's other beta, and Liam's new girlfriend. They find a young boy named Alex, whose parents were abducted by a man riding a horse. The pack goes to Alex's house and find that his parents have been erased from existence. The entire house is empty, except for Alex's room, as if the rest of his family just never existed. Stiles, Scott's best friend and the detective of the group, sees the man who took Alex's parents, looking like a zombie cowboy. Stiles and Lydia, the genius banshee girl with whom Stiles has been long enamored, deduce that the men on horseback are ghost riders, part of the mythical Wild Hunt. The Wild Hunt is a very old tradition that has become very popular again recently. Jacob Grimm wrote the first scholarly account of Germany's Wilde Jagd in 1835 after collecting oral accounts from people throughout the region. Historically, the Wild Hunt is a team of horsemen riding through the sky led by a great figure, usually Wodan, the German version of the Norse Odin. They would ride to signal oncoming war and devastation. In Teen Wolf, the Wild Hunt is just these ghost riders, these skeleton cowboys that come to a town and abduct every single person there. Anyone who sees them becomes a future target for erasure. And during that debacle, Alex was taken and erased. But Stiles realizes he is the next target of the Wild Hunt because he saw the Ghost Rider, and also everyone except Lydia has forgotten him. Before he's taken, he tells Lydia to remember that he loves her. But the next day, Lydia forgot all about him. Well, in real life, Dylan O'Brien, the actor who portrays Stiles, was filming the Maze Runner movies, and he wasn't available to be in every episode of season 6. So this seems like a deliberate effort to explain why he's only going to be in 3 episodes, while also still being billed as a star. Mason, Liam's best friend and gunning for Stiles' role as detective, and Corey, Mason's boyfriend who can turn invisible, see the Ghost Riders abducting a student in the school. And once they do it, they forget about him. But during that whole debacle, Corey discovered that he could see the Ghost Riders whenever he turned invisible. Scott, the main character of Teen Wolf, Lydia, and Malia, a coyote girl and Stiles' ex-girlfriend, all begin having subconscious memories linked to Stiles. Davis loves his hallucinations, I swear. They realize he must have been someone important to them. Well, Stiles' mother, Claudia, is alive as a result of Stiles' being erased. Is this an alternate history? Did her pregnancy with Stiles, exacerbate her nascent dementia? In a world without Stiles, does Claudia live? But then you would think there would be other drastic changes occurring with all the other people being disappeared. Why didn't Alex vanish when his parents were erased? What is Claudia doing here? Corey uses his power to recover the missing student's ID, and once he does that, the rest of the group are able to remember him. Dr. Alan Deaton, the local veterinarian and druid, later explains that some things remain behind after a person vanishes. These things are called relics. Finding a relic helps you remember the vanished person and undo the writer's magic. With Deaton's help, Lydia subconsciously draws Stiles' name, but does not remember him. The process they use is automatic writing. Lydia is supposed to clear her mind and just let her hand do whatever it wants. Psychologically, this could be because of ideas generating from the unconscious affecting one's motor skills. Psychics say it's the influence of the supernatural guiding their hand. In Lydia's case, it's her banshee powers powers, materializing something from the magic plane into the mortal plane. She writes the words mischief several times with the individual words formatted to shape the word Styles. After this, she begins trying to solve the mystery of the missing boy who makes her sad. She figures she needs to find the relic he left behind. Mr. Douglas, a new teacher at the high school, is revealed to be the Nazi alpha werewolf who escaped from the dread doctors. He kills several people and eats their pineal glands. Pineal. Oh man, I should have looked up how to pronounce that before recording. While we're here, the pineal gland is a pine cone shaped gland in the epithalamus of the brain that releases melatonin and regulates sleep. René Descartes, the guy who said, "I think, therefore I am," was really into studying physiology, and he was obsessed with the pineal gland. In 2 separate books, he wrote that this gland was where the human soul is located, and whence all our thoughts originate. So by eating the pineal glands of his victims, Mr. Douglas is eating their souls to sustain his immortality. Chris Argent, the local werewolf hunter and the father of Scott's deceased first love, recruits Melissa, Scott's mom and nurse at the local hospital, to find the werewolf responsible for the murders. Hayden meets a student named Gwen, played by the same girl as Heather from 13 Reasons Why, whose sister was abducted by the Ghost Riders. Assuming Gwen might be the writer's next target, the gang throws a party to keep her safe. The actor who plays Zach in 13 Reasons Why is also there. The writers arrive and Parrish confronts one of them, but he vanishes without attacking him. Corey touches one of the writers and makes it visible to all the guests. So now all the students at the party who saw the Ghost Rider are targets. Way to go, Corey. The gang tracks down Sheriff Stilinski's father, Elias, who turns out to have dementia and was abusive to his son, but he remembers Styles. Wow. So the sheriff just has to deal with dementia on all fronts, huh? Yikes. Poor Styles does not have a great genetic record when it comes to cognitive dysfunction. I also choose to read this as another example of old people are bad and their actions in the past made it hard for the young people of today. The gang attempts to protect everyone who saw the Ghost Riders at the party by taking all of them to Argent's underground bunker. Trapped underground with 2 of the 13 reasons. Now it's a party. The actor who plays Zach is actually the one who lets the riders into the bunker because he doesn't think that the rest of the kids are in danger. So now maybe Hannah Baker will mention that in one of her tapes, and that tape will be left behind as her relic. The riders erase everyone except our main characters. Parrish gets shot, but he survives. So getting shot or whipped by a rider is supposed to be enough to make you disappear, but it doesn't affect Parrish. And the conclusion everyone comes to is that it's because he's a hellhound. Oh, right, if you don't know who Parrish is, he's the new sheriff's deputy, but he's also a hellhound. Last season, it looked like he and Lydia were going to get together, but the writers completely dropped that. It's for the best, considering that's illegal. Lydia and Melissa investigate Claudia's medical records, which show that she had no children, but also includes her frontotemporal dementia. Oh my gosh, why can't I say that? Frontotemporal dementia. So erasing Styles also erased his name from the medical records, but it did not erase Claudia's condition or her history in the hospital. Styles' relic turns out to be his Jeep, his signature Jeep. And it's still in the school parking lot. Now we get an episode about where Styles went. After being abducted, he finds himself in an abandoned train train station with others who were also erased by the writers. One of those people is Peter Hale, who was abducted after he escaped Icon House during the power outage caused by the pack when they were rescuing Lydia in season 5. So that's why we haven't seen him for a while. I kind of just thought we were done with him. Are they bringing this male villain back for a final season redemption arc? So Peter Hale was the evil alpha from the very first season who gave Scott the bite and started this whole chain of events. In season 4, he returned to try to steal Scott's power, but was defeated and locked away, and now he's back for the final season. The two of them attempt to figure out how to escape. Peter makes it through the magic barrier that separates the Phantom train station from the real world, surviving only due to his healing ability. Apparently, you can't jump through the portal into the real world without getting really badly burned. I like how Peter has just been chilling in this train station for like an entire school year, and it wasn't until Styles showed up that he was like, you know what? Maybe we can leave. Scott and Malia find Peter and they remember who he is. Oh yeah, Peter is Malia's biological father. Not that the writers ever dealt with that baggage. Peter gives them the keys to the Jeep from Styles. Styles, back in the train station, breaks into the communications room and uses the intercom, and he's able to contact Scott and Lydia through the radio in his Jeep. So in his Jeep, he has the police tuner box thing because he likes to listen to police broadcasts and visit crime scenes. So he's broadcasting to the Jeep, and Scott and Lydia can hear him, and he asks Lydia if she remembers what he told her, and she says, "I love you." Styles tells them to find Canaan, one of the towns listed on the train station's arrivals board. Lydia has this vision of Canaan back in the 1980s, and the residents were all taken by the ghost riders. So she goes with Scott and Malia to the ghost town, and they run to this boy who leads them to a woman named Lenore. Lenore is a banshee and the only remaining resident of Canaan. Lenore takes them prisoner and forces them to be playmates for her son Caleb, who is actually dead, and this is his ghost. He was unconsciously summoned by her to fill the void in her life that was created by the loss of the rest of the town. Caleb almost drowns Scott and Malia until Lydia is able to convince Lenore to release them. So the whole concept of this episode is that our heroes ventured back to a ghost town and met a woman who was stuck in the past. This calls to mind my own criticism of conservatives, that they're stuck in an idealized picture of the past. Scott and Malia, who represent the millennials from the modern day, are almost drowned by the ghost of Caleb when they threaten his mother's idyllic peace. It is not until Lydia can force Lenore to confront the reality of her situation that she releases them. Lydia theorizes that Claudia is a ghost just like Caleb, conjured by Sheriff Stilinski to fill the void in his life created by Styles' erasure. Liam and Hayden come up with a plan to fight the Riders. Using Kira's sword, Liam brings Theo back from hell. What is this, supernatural? Theo was one of the antagonists from last season. Working with the evil Dread Doctors, he tried to create a pack of chimeras and then steal power for himself. As punishment, Kira, forever in our hearts, sent him to hell. Another male villain being revived for a redemption arc? You don't say. I guess when the enemy is bad enough, you have to make allies with people you thought you could never agree with. Like Mitt Romney and former President George Bush. We'll just forget the war crimes and the needless deaths these politicians and sexy TV villains contributed to. Malia and Melissa heal Peter's burns in return for his help finding the location of the portal to the Riders train station. The rest of the pack, with Theo's help, capture a Ghost Rider and try to interrogate him, but they are unsuccessful. Until Parrish tries, and we find out that he can communicate with the Riders, but the Rider somehow triggers Parrish and starts his hellhound shift, and then Parrish tries to break the Ghost Rider out of his cage. So Ghost Riders and hellhounds have some kind of special bond. There is a lot of loose lore being thrown around that we will never get explained because the series is ending. Scott and Liam stop Parrish from freeing the Rider, and I think that Parrish runs off into the woods howling or something. He leaves the scene. Mr. Douglas shows up and overpowers the group, and then he kills the Ghost Rider and eats its pineal gland. And now that he's eaten the soul of a Ghost Rider, Mr. Douglas is, well, just really powerful. Mr. Douglas attacks Corey with the Ghost Rider's whip and causes him to vanish like the Rider's other victims. Oh no. Mr. Douglas forces Argent and Melissa to help him find Parrish, and once they help him, he erases both of them, and then he takes control of Parrish. So now it's time for some exposition. Theo sits the rest of the group down and explains that Douglas was a Nazi captain. Now he wants to take control of the Ghost Riders and use them as his own supernatural army. Yeah, fascist groups often use arcane and fantastic symbols in their aesthetic. They really know how to appeal to basement-dwelling virgins. The pack realizes that the rift's entrance is underground. So they go down there and they have a show off, and the Riders just straight up erase Mason and Hayden. But Liam escapes. Mr. Douglas and the mind-controlled Parrish confront the gang at the rift. Parrish is able to open it, and then Douglas and Parrish go through into the Ghost Rider world Phantom train station place, and then they seal the rift up after them. The Riders nearly get Scott and Malia, but Peter intervenes and he sacrifices himself to help them escape, and he gets erased again. What a guy. Lydia and Sheriff Stilinski find Stiles' old bedroom behind a wall in the Stilinski house. Lydia can see all of his old possessions, but the sheriff cannot. There's this really emotional exchange where Lydia has to help the sheriff confront the truth that his wife is dead and his son is missing. The rules behind this magic aren't adequately explained for me. The Wild Hunt gave Caleb back to Lenore to replace the hole in her heart from losing the rest of Canaan. But Lenore was a banshee. The Ghost Riders took everyone except her. The sheriff isn't supernatural at all, as far as I know, and he isn't immune to the Ghost Riders, so why did they give him Claudia? It might be an interaction between the imagination and the magic of the Wild Hunt. Stiles was such a huge part of the sheriff's life that he couldn't ignore that void even if Stiles was erased, so his own brain conjured the apparition of Claudia to keep him from questioning the absence of his son. And maybe there were a ton of other apparitions in Beacon Hills after the entire high school got erased earlier, and we just don't get the chance to see them because the show doesn't care about the parents of background characters. Anyway, Sheriff Stilinski recovers his memory of Stiles and realizes that Claudia is dead, which causes her spirit to vanish. Reblog if you cry every time. Well, this victory doesn't last very long because then Sheriff Stilinski gets erased like in the very next episode. So now we're left with only Scott, Lydia, Malia, Liam, and Theo. The only people left in the town. Lore. They realize they can open another rift by remembering Stiles. So it's up to Lydia, Malia, and Scott to try and remember him. Liam and Theo stand guard outside of the Argent bunker and fight off the Ghost Riders to keep them from finding Scott. So Scott and Malia take turns going into the giant freeze chamber that Argent has, which induces the almost coma, so you can can access your unconscious. They need to go into that death-like trance in order to find the suppressed memories of Styles. And they are able to recover some memories. It's a really cool montage of scenes from earlier seasons, like a celebration of how far the series has come since the beginning. Dabbling in a little nostalgia? No, really, it's the final season of a show that was riddled with obstacles and setbacks, and yet they still managed to make it this far. Let them have a little sentimentality. As a treat, their memories are not enough to open the rift. Scott hypnotizes Lydia because she doesn't have wolf healing, so she is not getting in the freezer. Being hypnotized brings her to the memory of when she first kissed Styles all the way in 3A, and this memory is what opens the rift, the power of love. So Styles passes through this rift and reappears in his Jeep, and then somehow he's able to free Parrish from Douglas's control. Liam finds the train station and reunites with Mason and Hayden. At this point, I don't really remember a lot, and I don't know if the train station is physically in their world, or when the other kids opened the rift, Liam passed through, but somehow he's able to enter the Phantom train station and meet up with his friend. And they discover that Douglas has been using Corey to merge the Ghost Rider's realm with the real world. Oh, wait, that would have explained it. I should have just read ahead in my own liner notes. Yeah, so Corey had the weird ability to pierce the veil by turning invisible. So they show him chained up to the intercom system in the communications room, and they're using his power to bring the Phantom train station into the real world. And so Styles and Lydia share a really passionate kiss, and then Claudia's spirit attacks them. What? I thought she disappeared. And even if she didn't, the sheriff was already erased. So why is she still here? Remember when Caleb tried to drown Scott and Malia? Maybe these apparitions are actually demons. But even so, why they gotta make Styles kill his own mom? Maybe one day I'll rewatch the season and do a Freudian analysis. Yeah, they're able to defeat her, and then they get ready for the final battle against Douglas and the Riders. So a giant train is on its way to pick up all the citizens of Beacon Hills, and that's a bad thing for our heroes. Well, they managed to divert the train from Beacon Hills. There's literally a train switch somewhere, and they pull it, and the train goes down a different track, and I guess it just goes to terrorize some other town instead of Beacon Hills. And then the rest of the group free Corey from his bonds, and the merging of the two worlds stops, and everything's fine. The Riders ride off because their plan was foiled, but they take Douglas with them. He tries to control them, but they tell him they don't have a leader, which is not true of the original myths, but whatever, they're gone. Beacon Hills returns to normal, and the pack completes their last day of high school. So I made it to the end of the season recap without really touching on Trump. I mentioned intergenerational conflict, the woman trapped in the 80s, teaming up with moderate Republicans to fight a worse Republican. But why did I have so much in my intro about border walls, travel bans, and MAGA, make America gay again? So the real villain of this season was Mr. Douglas, the immortal Nazi werewolf. Trump gets compared to Nazis a lot, and we have an evil Löwenmensch in our season. I'm too lazy to research any deeper into Douglas's backstory or what the Löwenmensch are, but He led a platoon of super-powered Nazis looking for mystical artifacts that would help the Führer win the war. This is a common enough trope. The Ghost Riders and the Wild Hunt are not villains. They are an antagonistic force, sure, but they're not evil. They're natural, a force of nature, a recurring cycle throughout history. They don't have a leader or a real agenda besides erase this entire town from existence. They represent the collective mind, the frenzied response to change. In the old tradition, their ride symbolized oncoming war or disaster. For our purposes, these riders are a portent of the tensions being exacerbated by Donald Trump's campaign. It's a pretty wild coincidence that they look like cowboys. As far as Americana and our warped aesthetic of westward expansion go, cowboys are lawless heroes who love the ride. Never mind that real cowboys were predominantly black, indigenous, or Latinx peoples, and the truth of westward expansion is genocide and imperial conquest. Kind of a radical subversion there, Jeff, taking the whitewashed hero of Western mythology and making him a villain aligned with the historical violence he actually wrought, and those left behind by their devastation have to summon ghosts to reject their own grief because they have no hope of confronting it. Lenore and her dead son, the sheriff and his dead wife, the real world people who are exploited and tossed aside by neoliberal capitalism, but cling to dreams of riches for themselves as an anodyne for their suffering. It's delusional. For every 1 in a million who overcomes the odds and becomes rich, there are 999,999 others who will remain in poverty because resources are diverted away from them to the one who is successful. Indeed, it's not until Douglas tries to harness the Wild Hunt for his own nefarious ends that our heroes actually have someone they can fight against. Loading populism and capitalism on the backs of the Wild Hunt is probably a dangerous move for me to make because it makes it seem like these things are natural and not structural. But isn't that the lie we live inside already? Davis and the Riders can create a supernatural force that our heroes have no hope of stopping, only diverting, because their imaginations can't conceive of an end to neoliberalism, racism, ruthless expansionism. Ooh, let's talk about the train. Trains are symbols of progress, but they are also fixed onto tracks. When you're taken into the hunt, when you join the hive mind, the populist collective, you wait at the station to board the train, like joining the bandwagon. I already said it, but the ultimate victory happens when our heroes flip the switch and send the train down a different track. You can't stop the train, can't stop progress, but you might have some say in how we progress. There's no going back to the 80s or to the 50s or to the wild west. Time is slipping into the future. The Republicans and the progressive left both know this. Things have to change. It's inevitable. If you can't stop change, you can ensure it's a good change. Conservative liberals, because I don't see the two as mutually exclusive, who want to keep things the same are going to be plowed underground, and they're trying to take the entire country down with them. To ignore populism, the will of the people, is a mistake. Trump knew how to harness them with his fascist talking points. Bernie Sanders, peace be upon him, knew this as well. I don't know if the writers of Teen Wolf knew this, considering how they ended this half of the season. The Wild Hunt snags Douglas and drags him away. A fun idea. The evil politician whips up a frenzied populist movement that he can't actually control and gets swept away by. And the heroes send the train somewhere else and return to normal. Of course, in the real world, there are still 10 episodes left before the series fully concludes, and Donald Trump just got elected. Thank you for listening to RenFare. I hope you'll join me next time. RenFare is available to listen wherever you find your podcasts. If you like this content and want to hear more, feel free to follow me on Spotify, Anchor.fm, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Radio Free Public, Bullhorn, and several others. RenFare is also uploaded to the From the Margins YouTube channel that I share with my content partner Violet Knight. You can join us there to hear us discuss current events and our own interests. If you feel so inclined, you can join the discussion by becoming a member of our Patreon to support the growing channel. From the Margins with Violet and Connor is also available to stream on the audio platforms I listed above. Please check us out there as well. Until next time.